All right, thanks everybody for joining us today, March 1st at 4 p.m. for our regular City Council meeting from the City of Courtenay. And I'd like to just start by first recognizing that we are gathered in our Zooming on the unceded traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. And due to the COVID coronavirus emergency, the City of Courtenay, with the authority of Ministerial Order M192, Local Government Meetings and Bylaw Process, COVID-19 Order Number 3, implemented changes to its regular open council meetings. In the interest of public health and safety, and in accordance with Section 3.1 of Ministerial Order Number 3, M192, in-person attendance by members of the public at council meetings will not be permitted until further notice. Council meetings are presided over by the mayor or acting mayor, with electronic participation by council and staff via live web streaming. And with that, I'm just going to start with a bit of a comment. Here in Courtenay and the Comox Valley, we have had an increase in cases, a spike, you might say, increase in exposures at schools, et cetera. And I think our school district has said it quite well in that this is really a wake-up call to our community to really think about what we're doing in terms of our interactions. At this point, the idea of having bubbles, friends, those kinds of things really went away back in November. So at this point in time, it's really staying at home with your families. If you go to work, if your children are going to school, but really keeping those interactions as limited as possible. And really, we don't have the bubbles that we had last summer, let's say, where you could have sleepovers or dinner parties, those kinds of things. It's really about keeping things, keeping it tight. It's that wake-up call to really help us double down and get ready really to move through this. And whether or not you're somebody who has received the vaccine or you're going to be receiving the vaccine, until we reach that herd immunity, really we need to be following the advice of our medical health officer, provincial health officer, Dr. Bonnie Henry. And I do want to thank our local medical health officer, Charmaine Enns, who spent time with local leaders today to really help us articulate what the message is and make sure that people understand that we haven't made it through it. I know it can be frustrating and tedious for a lot of people, but we really need to, again, double down right now. This is a great wake-up call. I think we can take this opportunity and make sure that we are following those directions and being a little bit more restrictive in our interactions. With that, I will move on to the adoption of minutes from February 16th and 22nd.
Move adoption.
Second.
Excellent. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections for any of those minutes? Seeing none, I'll assume those are unanimously received, and we'll move on to delegations. And we have our first delegation with the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 17, Leave the Streets Behind. And I believe we have Bill Webb, Don Taylor, and Scott Harrison. And just because I know you, Bill, I might hand it off to you first. I know all of you look like you're muted right now, but if you want to take yourself off mute. And Bill, I'm going to hand it over to you to continue the conversation.
Thanks, Mayor. Don?
Yeah, good afternoon to Mayor and Council. My name is Don Taylor. I'm with Qualicum Beach Legion Branch 76, past president there. Retired from the RCMP after 36 years of service. And I want to thank the Mayor and Council there today for allowing us to present on this very important issue of veterans housing. With me today is Bill Webb. Bill Webb is the service officer and vice president of the Courtenay Legion. And Bill will be actually making the presentation. Also with us today is Scott Harrison, a council member from the Qualicum Beach Council. So again, thank you very much for allowing us to present today, and I'll turn it over to Bill.
Thanks, Don. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing us to come and talk to you today about a very important issue that's facing us in our communities today, both in the Comox Valley and Oceanside, and that's veterans homelessness. Some of you I've met through the regional district meeting and through the Coalition to End Homelessness meeting. Currently, as of today, this morning, we've identified 16 homeless veterans in our community. And if the current 2020 homeless count for the Comox Valley is correct of 132, veterans make up 12% of that count, which I feel is completely outrageous in today's age. So in early 2020, our Member of Parliament, Gord Johns, called a meeting with the Qualicum Legion to talk about veterans homelessness and housing. And then in April, we came together as two communities in a more comprehensive talk about what we can do to help homeless veterans in our community. As many of you know, in 2018, the federal government released its national housing strategy with a $55.5 billion injection of funds into the system. And veterans were listed as one of the marginalized groups that should be given priority for housing. As of today, that has not happened with regards to veterans. So we have partnered with Branch 28 Cumberland, Branch 160 Comox, Bowser Branch 211, which is part of Oceanside, and then Branch 76 Qualicum and 49 Parksville. I'm pleased to say that the Qualicum Beach town and council were the first to pass a resolution in council supporting our efforts in applying for grants through the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Agency, through the National Housing Strategy grants, and the Veterans Wellbeing Fund through Veterans Affairs. And they also passed a resolution to provide $3,000 in matching funding to put towards those targeted studies on veterans housing and identifying veterans in our communities. I can say that as of an hour ago, the city of Parksville matched their $3,000 funding and support our efforts in that. Also, the regional district has also done that, though our request for matching funding is gone off to their budgets committee because it is budget time. So we're reaching out to everybody. So that's the two things that we're first requesting from the city of Comox is a letter of support and matching funding up to a maximum of $3,000 towards our targeted study. We've been in consultations with the Comox Valley Coalition to End Homelessness and the SOS Society from Oceanside and the Vancouver Island University Psychology Department to conduct a study specifically targeted at veterans in our community and what we can do to provide the services they need. In 2018, I was fortunate to be able to go to Ottawa and testify at committee for the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs as a homeless veteran. I have lived experience on the streets in the Comox Valley as a homeless veteran with two kids. I was fortunate enough to be able to find housing in my community. And I found that housing because the property manager just happened to be a UK veteran. So I was given an opportunity to have housing for myself and my kids. So this issue is not only dear to my heart because of the veterans that I work with, that there's also a misconception that veterans are these elderly men from World War II or Korea, when in fact the average age of a veteran in Canada today is 46 years old. They're contemporary age veterans. So the demographics and the needs of veterans have changed dramatically over the past 10 years. Most of the veterans that we're facing today have children and are either on the cusp of becoming homeless in our community because of the high rents or the inability to find affordable housing in our community. So we're moving forward with a study between the Comox Valley and Oceanside to once and for all look at these issues that veterans face today. I can say that as of last month, the City of London in Ontario made history by becoming the first community in Canada to functionally end veterans homelessness with the Built for Zero community and the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. I would love to see our two communities be the next one in line to end veterans homelessness. And I believe we can over the next couple of years with support from all of our local councils and our community partners by moving forward. And with that, I'm going to maybe pass to Scott to talk about a council perspective from the work that he's been doing.
Very much, Bill. So obviously, thank you very much, Your Worship, and members of council for having us here. The resolution which we passed, there were two. One was to do matching funding for $3,000, which was the previous ask, and also just a resolution simply stating we're going to work towards ending veterans homelessness in our area. As well, we've had informal discussions about the allocation of land. The problem, though, is that with our community being the oldest in Canada and the surrounding area being much older, we want to make sure we're actually finding out who are the veterans in our region that we're trying to help and trying to house. What are their needs? What sort of supports do they need? How long are they going to stay homeless? Is it something that will take 3 or 4 years, or is it something that takes 1 or 2 months? There's a lot of questions that still need answering. And so this is why we're starting off with looking at funding for a study done in conjunction with academics who will implement best practices. Beyond that, the long term will take a lot of work. Veterans unfortunately fall into a gap between provincial and federal jurisdictions. They are outside of the purview of BC Housing, but also Veterans Affairs is difficult to get into the into housing as a response. So there are good people providing services, but this is a particular gap. And this is where I think local governments, with the leadership as well of our MP, Gord Johns, who I really have to commend for his hard work on this file. He shows up for the meetings personally. He doesn't just delegate it to staff, and that's something an MP doesn't have to do. This is something where I think we can make a real difference with a relatively small investment. We can really get the ball rolling, both on a regional basis, but in the long run for the country as a whole. And I think that providing housing for homeless populations can be contentious, but providing housing for veterans is something that I think has broad support in all our communities. And it's something that can really be a way to start more positive conversations for how we respond to these structural challenges in our local economies. If there's any further questions, I'd be happy to answer if I could, but I really want to highlight Bill's expertise here because he really is an expert. I spend a little bit of my spare time in affordable housing circles, and the degree of knowledge he has and the passion he has is really inspiring. Thanks so much for your time.
All right. Thanks, Scott and Bill and Dawn. I really appreciate your presentation, and I'll echo Scott's comments about Gord Johns. I know this has been a file that he's been really ferocious on, and I mean so many that he's this way. But I've had a few conversations with him, and really happy to see you bring your perspective to our council. With that, I'm going to pass over to Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much for the presentation. You know, homelessness in general is a travesty in a wealthy nation like Canada, but it's even more so when we think about people who have served our country, who find themselves in this situation. And I'm guessing that it's not just a matter of high rents and lack of income. I'm sure there's trauma that some are experiencing that is impacting their circumstances. Having said that, I would like some clarification. It sounds, if I heard correctly, you're applying for a grant to do a study and you're looking for matching funding. I wonder if you could just give us a little bit more detail about the who's conducting the study, how long it's going to take, what the total cost is. In general, we have channeled our support of homelessness through the Coalition to End Homelessness, and I'm not sure if that would be a source of applying for a grant in the Valley for this purpose, but maybe you could clarify the actual nature of the grant and such. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. So I've been in contact with the group that the Coalition to End Homelessness in the Comox Valley has been working with their research study. They're out of Kelowna. Off the top of my head, I can't remember their name. but the academics that we've engaged through VIU, we're hoping that in conjunction with the coalition, we may be able to put something together, but it's going to be specifically targeted for veterans.
So could you just clarify who actually would be doing the study? What's the total cost? What's the time frame? That type of thing.
Total cost right now, we don't have. We've asked for that cost, and I'm hoping to have that total cost in the next couple of weeks. So if we are successful with any of the other grants through BC Housing that I'm looking at, we're hoping to keep the cost. It's going to be in the tens of thousands of dollars. Not, kidding aside, it's not going to be a cheap endeavor, I don't think.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
Oh, and if I may, forgive me, Your Worship.
Sure. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, just for context, I did speak to someone who conducted a point-in-time count for BC Housing. The cost for the Oceanside area alone was around $11,000, just for our region. So if you're essentially doing 2 regions, depending on the boundaries with the partners who may be engaged in the long run, somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $30,000 would be a reasonable guess off the top of my head. But this is something that I think a consultant would be more qualified to speak to than myself.
And Scott, the pit or the point in time count that you were talking about, is that's kind of almost tangential, like that's because I know we've done those here in the Comox Valley as well. So this is really, if I'm understanding, or if I'm, maybe I'm taking a bit of a leap, this is more of a deep dive, really around retired veterans and their housing situation. Is that? And so,
if I may, Your Worship. Sorry, I don't want to cut off Councillor Moore, but just briefly, I think that what we're trying to do here is the point-in-time counts. Vancouver recently did one where they ask if you're someone who served, which is a good first step. But if we're actually going to house people, we do need a little bit more information on what are their circumstances, what are they dealing with. As such, it's a ballpark comparable, but I wouldn't feel that that's like a hard and fast figure that I'd want to feel anyone should be held accountable to. But just to give an idea of context for Councillor Hillian, because I think it's an entirely fair question.
Yeah, no, and he's also, I think, chair of our Finance Select Committee. So he's doesn't have control over the purse strings, but he's certainly thinking about it, as I think all of our councillors are. And you throw me off a little bit when you call me Your Worship. So you can continue doing it, but Mr. Mayor is totally fine, or Mayor is good too. Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I was thinking about the point in time count myself, and I wondering if there's a way to. I think the next count is actually coming up. We get the results so late after the count. The results came out not that long ago, but it's almost time again for the count, I believe. And I'm wondering if we could get some, get some more specific information from that count. And then I also wondered about the housing study, and I guess I'm wondering about existing data that's out there, if we can extrapolate some of that. And you probably know that our Coalition to End Homelessness here is pretty active, and I'm just wondering about having some further involvement with them. I mean, not obviously creating a bunch more work, and I'm not saying to not consider funding, but maybe there could be a meeting of the minds or something to look at some ways to gather some of this data and get some more detail.
Yeah, so someone who works specifically with veterans, I ask a lot of different questions that the coalition or community partners typically wouldn't ask. One of the main questions that are on homeless count paperwork is, are you a veteran? 95% plus will always say that they're not, and that's for a number of reasons. They feel embarrassed the position that they're in. And a lot of them don't think they qualify as a veteran for a number of reasons. One, they may not have deployed on an operational tour. They may be a reservist, or they didn't serve long enough in the Canadian Forces or the RCMP. And that's what we're finding, is that these people don't think they qualify. So asking the right questions like, have you ever worn a uniform for your country? Have you ever been in the Canadian Armed Forces or RCMP? And then our community partners are then able to have a short conversation with them and then make the referral to us so that we can gather a more detailed information.
Excellent. And Councillor Hilling, I see you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, based on Councillor Moran's comment, the point in time count, I believe, happens every 2 years. So there wouldn't be another one coming up until next spring. I could be mistaken on that, but I wonder if under the circumstances, since we don't make decisions on the night that a delegation presents, I would be prepared to move that we ask staff to consult with the Coalition to End Homelessness, and then that could be brought forward to us when this comes back on a future agenda.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Councillor Hilling. Councillor Moore, did you have a
Oh,
follow-up?
if that was a motion, I would second it, but maybe we have other speakers to go here.
Yeah, and I don't see any. Oh, having said that, Councillor Theos, under the wire. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Bill, I wanted to ask you, if I may, in regards to the concept of people in the armed forces and the police retiring in their 40s, as you were mentioning, to much degree as the average age. I think you were saying mid 40s. Now, my question is in regards to expanding the process to be inclusive of spouses that maybe have lost a loved one that was in police or armed forces, and it might be an older generation, because currently I've been receiving phone calls and emails from elderly people that are now in a difficult position of affording the rents that are currently being asked for within the Comox Valley. So have you had any thought process about expanding it out to be inclusive to the spouses if their loved one that was in the armed forces passed away?
Anyone that qualifies for support from the Legion is any military member or that has served in the Canadian Armed Forces, RCMP, and their families. They are who we provide services to. So if it's a family member that's struggling and we can provide services and get them connected with the appropriate resources, then that's what we do. So would that be part of the study? I'm not sure how that would fit because of our conversations with our partners that we're looking at to conduct the study. That's definitely something that I'm mindful of what's happening in our community.
Thank you, Bill.
Excellent. And so if there's no further questions or comments, I might look to Mr. Richta. Is now an appropriate time for that moving and seconding? I don't think we moved to receive the delegation, so we just received them. So
yes, thank you, Mayor. We could have a resolution for receipt, or we could just have it noted in the minutes that the presentation was received.
okay. All right, and so if I not seen anything, we'll assume that the delegation is unanimously received. And Councillor Hilling, did you want to do a follow-up?
Yes, Mayor, I'll move that we request staff to follow up with the Legion presenters and the Comox Valley Coalition to End Homelessness prior to bringing this matter back to council for consideration.
Second.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. I think it's a pretty straightforward motion. Unless somebody is in opposition, I'll assume that it's unanimously received. So let me know if you're in opposition. I don't see anybody. All right. Thanks so much, Bill and Scott and Don, for your presentation today. I think especially having the base here in our community, it's certainly something that hits home, and as Councillor Hillian and others have mentioned tonight, it's one of those things that is fairly unacceptable to have people who have served their country and given up so much to be left in a situation that's destitute. So really appreciate your efforts on this. With that, we are going to vary the agenda. Who would like to vary the agenda? Councillor Hillian?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we vary the agenda by now taking item 6.1.
Okay, and I did see Bill and Don possibly waving their hands. So Bill, did you have a comment, or is he gone now? And Don?
No, I was just leaving the, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Don. I really appreciate it. And if Bill had something to say, you can always text me later. I'll make sure it gets back to council. Fantastic. With that, we have moved and seconded that transition, and so we'll pass it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. We have our fire chief with us tonight, Don Bardonix. And with that, I'll pass it over to Don to summarize the report and take any questions from council.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for giving me the opportunity to review the report for you. During 2020, we totaled 834 for incidents, 553 being emergency and 281 being non-emergencies. The most important thing is last year we didn't have any severe injuries or fatalities. The numbers dropped a little over 2019, not very much at all. Mostly in the emergency calls. The non-emergency increased by 41 calls. That was substantial for us. A lot of that was due to the smoke complaints during the spring COVID and the provincial ban of non-burning, and we were dealing with smoke complaints all the time. The other part of it was dealing with the homeless camps. As for east side versus west side, the west side was 474, east side is 360, which is pretty much holding true to previous years. Our fire losses for the city and our fire protection districts. Now, you may notice that this report just has City of Courtenay, Courtenay Fire Protection District, and Merville. There's no Solom Farnham listed there anymore. It's because the regional district amalgamated those into one district for a total loss of $810,000 for the whole areas. Last year was challenging for us in the training levels when the province put the bans on, and we had to pretty much kick everybody out of the fire hall unless we were responding to calls. With that, we found ways to make videos here and do online testing for some of the crews, and that went through the summer months and whatnot. Later in the year, we started training again in smaller groups. That's moved on to, we have 3 companies that we train normally on Tuesday nights. We've broken those companies down to Monday night, Tuesday night, and Wednesday night, and rotating the instructors through that. We're happy to announce, again, it's the end of December 2020, that every member of this fire department is NFPA 1001 level 2 certified. That, I said it time and time again, that's an accomplishment for volunteer fire departments. As far as our fire prevention program goes, that's been totally affected through the COVID. We went to a self-inspection mode for the low risk businesses, where we've sent out what they should be looking at. They would go through their property, sign it and send it back to our fire prevention officers. If there was problems, they would call, or if we had to, we would arrange to find a safe way to visit their business. The higher risk properties, we still have to go out and physically do the inspections. We're really hoping this isn't going to be long-term. It's not the best way to be doing fire inspections, but with all things being equal, we're trying to keep our crews safe. Same as our fire prevention education. We didn't do the fire safety house last year. We didn't do any tours. What we did do is we put together a small program that we could teach a single class at a time and keep the distance from our crews while they're out dealing with that. And of course, pre-screening anybody that we met up with. As far as the department itself goes, we're 53 members now, full-time members, regular members of the department. We have 8 in that have completed the training, and quite honestly, the provisionals sitting on the sidelines. When we have vacations, we bring them in. When somebody retires and moves on, then they're brought under the department full-time. We did not do a training program for 2020, or start a training program in 2020, and we're hoping that later this year we'll have the ability to do that. Anybody have any questions?
Maybe I'll just comment real quickly. Just have great respect for what our volunteer fire department does for our community. In fact, it was probably one of the first.
Mr. Mayor, I've lost audio from my end.
Oh, you can't hear us now? I can hear you. I did hear you, but now you've muted yourself. And I know we got Eric who can. Oh, you're back again. Awesome. You are muted, so if you answer any questions for me, and I will have a question at the end, but I did just want to comment on our volunteer firefighters dinner. Last year was probably the first event that got canceled due to COVID. And it was a tough decision, I know, for yourself and the city to make that call. But, based on wanting to make sure that our first responders were kept safe, I think it was the right call, and really appreciate that leadership that you demonstrated at that point. And have continued throughout the pandemic. So thanks for that. My question really is based on one of the things you mentioned was the non-emergency responses, and it sounded like you said it was because of smoke and really people not complying to the fire restrictions. Is that what you were saying? So is that people doing backyard fires or just burning wet wood, or?
Mr. Mayor, that is exactly it. Things changed last year's with the provincial smoke ban. We didn't have an increase of people doing it in the city. It's in our fire protection districts. And there was a lot of confusion over what the bylaw says that they can burn, when they do need a permit, when they don't need a permit. And then the provincial came down with a ban under the smoke control regulations. And that's where they increased.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Councilor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And thank you so much for the report. It's nice to see that you were able to adapt a little bit of your programming to include some of those educational components, because I know that the kids in particular really enjoy that. I have a grandson right now who's really excited about fire departments and fire people and all of that. I was curious about the comment about the encampments, and I know that was also a piece that increased some of those calls. And I just wondered if you're finding any opportunities for, I guess, any education that can help in that respect, or any type of outreach that can help mitigate some of those issues for people who are sleeping in the rough and feeling the need to have fire to keep warm or to cook or whatever. Are you having any impact at all when you go out to those calls with lessening or mitigating some of those issues, or is it a losing battle?
They have reduced a little bit over the winter. We're doing absolutely nothing to mitigate it because I don't want any interaction any more than I have to with my crews with the public until this virus situation is settled. My crew is more important to me than the public education portion of it, unfortunately.
For sure. Yeah, I guess I was thinking not so much in a formal sense, but fair enough. That makes total sense. Maybe there's a way that we can communicate to some of the outreach folks a little bit better to help you with that, to stress that point around safety with the fires. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Excellent. And next, it looks like all the hands have gone down. Councillor Theos, I know you had your hand up. Did you take it down yourself?
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor. It's I had it up and I don't know how it went down. I didn't touch the screen. Sorry. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, Don, for the presentation and the update and all the good work you and your team are doing. Now you finished with personnel and you were talking about the 53 members and the 8 that are there to offset some of the members when needed. I was just interested in comparison to last year. How was the retention this year with COVID and everything going on? Was it a strong retention from last year, or was there some noticeably challenges with people?
Okay, I keep losing audio here, but what I've got of it is on the retention portion of it. We've been doing really well, actually. Hence the reason we've gone through 2020 without starting a program, and I still have 8 firefighters in reserve. We're hoping that'll hold true until the end of the year, and we'll start another program. The other questions that came up with over keeping the firefighters in reserve, do they lose interest? Well, we have so many people taking time off or leave of absences for medicals, pregnancies, whichever, we rotate them in. So for the most part, they've been covering for somebody over that portion of the year. So they're still out there getting the practice on what they're doing. And when that person that's on a leave of absence comes back, they go into a reserve status.
Oh, that's excellent news. Thanks so much, Don.
Excellent. And I don't see any further questions or comments. Just again, want to make sure the fire department understands how much we truly value the work you guys are doing over there, and can't wait to get back to some of the normal things. Obviously, working with school kids, training, but would really like to be able to recognize those volunteers at the volunteer dinner as well. So pass on our gratitude from council, and with that, I'll expect that this is a unanimous receipt from council, and I'll say thanks again, Don, and let you go on your way.
Thank you very much, and we definitely appreciate the support of council and mayor. Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Getting back to our regularly scheduled program, that puts us back to 4.1 development services. If somebody would like to move the variance permit for 700-444 Lurwick Road.
I can move this, Mayor.
Go for it.
I'll move that based on today's staff report, development variance permit number 2004 700-444 Lurwick Road, council approve option 1 and proceed with issuing development variance permit number 2004.
I'll second that.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And I'll pass it over to staff. Trevor Kushner.
Thank you, Mayor. I will pass this over to Matthew Fitzgerald to summarize the report and take any questions that council may have.
Thank you. Through CAO to Mayor and Council. So this is a sign variance to increase the area of one of the signs on the recently constructed PetSmart building, which is in the Crown Isle Shopping Center Plaza. There are logo signs on all 4 faces of the building, and the proposal is to add additional signage under one of those logos on the east side of the building, which is the side facing the Fifty's grocery store. They did conduct an alternative public meeting for this proposal, and they received 1 comment in support. Staff have assessed this variance as supportable given the low impact on the surrounding neighborhood, as well as the relative size to the large building, and are recommending approval of the variance. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thanks very much, Matt. And I do see that Councillor Hillian would like to talk.
Thank you, Mary. I have no problem with the variance requested. I just want to clarify if staff could remind us what's the criteria for these applications coming to council versus being dealt with at the staff level. It seems to me we made a move a year or 2 ago to give staff authority to address most sign issues, but maybe you could just clarify what our policy is in that regard. Thanks.
Thanks for the question. Through CAO to Mayor and Council. So all variances to the current sign bylaw have to be approved by council. They can't be delegated to staff. The change you might be referring to is the new sign bylaw, which did a lot to streamline the overall sign approvals and reduce the amount of variances, from what I understand, quite substantially.
Glad to hear that. Thanks very much.
Excellent. And I don't see any further questions or comments. So with that, I will poll council for the vote, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, I'm in support.
And Councillor Frisch.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Moore.
In favor.
And Councillor Theos.
Support.
Excellent. And I'm in support as well. Fantastic. Thanks very much. Next, we have the zoning amendment bylaw for 2011 Cummings Road.
Mayor, I'll move that based on the March 1st, 2021 staff report zoning amendment bylaw number 3026 to allow for a secondary residence at 2011 Cummings Road. Council approve option 1 and proceed to first and second readings of zoning amendment bylaw number 3026 2021, and that council directs staff to schedule and advertise a statutory public hearing with respect to that zoning amendment.
Second that.
Excellent. And I'll pass it over to staff, Trevor Kushner.
Thank you, Mayor. Back over to Matthew Fitzgerald to summarize the report and take any questions that council may have.
Thanks to CAO to Mayor and Council. So this is a proposal to rezone a property to allow the construction of a secondary residence. The property currently contains a house on the east side of the property, and the proposal is to add secondary residence to the west half of the lot. The proposed secondary residence complies with all the zoning parameters relative to secondary residences. An alternative public meeting was conducted to obtain comments from the surrounding neighborhood. And there are quite a few submitted, which have been both for and against the proposal, and the summaries included in the staff report, as long as the submissions from the general public. Staff are recommending that council gives this bylaw first and second reading, and that we public hearing to obtain additional neighborhood feedback.
Excellent. And I do see some questions or comments, starting with Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks to staff for the report. I just wonder if staff could clarify the point that was raised in a number of the feedback messages that the secondary residence proposed is actually larger than the existing residence. And to provide further context, I actually drove through this area earlier today and noticed that this is a street with a lot of very different type of houses on it, from some that look like they've been there for 50 or 60 years to others, massive houses, 3-car garage houses that look like they've been built in recent years. It's a bit of a hodgepodge. But I just wonder if we could get some clarification on the size of the new house as compared to the existing one.
Thanks for the question. So I think some of the confusion is the actual footprint of the two buildings. The new one is larger, but as applicants stated, the existing house is two stories. So it's 72 square meters is the footprint on the ground. So times two, so 144 square meters would be the entire area of the existing house, whereas the proposed secondary residence would be limited to just under 90 square meters. So they're correct. The footprint is larger on the secondary residence, but given the two floors, the floor area in the existing house is greater.
And the existing residence is actually a relatively small house, is it not?
Yeah, comparable to some of the other houses on the street, it is a smaller house.
Yeah, thanks. I'll certainly support this going to public hearing so we can hear from the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. And next we have Councillor Will Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I will also, I think, be in support of this. I think this is a really, I like the fact it's an intergenerational home. I like the fact that it meets high energy efficiency standards, saying it'll meet passive house standards with solar panels. And I think also the design, I think one of the commenters described it as unobtrusive, small, and well designed. And I thought it's a very, very nice way of encapsulating it. I think it would probably belong quite well on that site. And I saw that the comments were roughly evenly divided in favor and opposed. And the ones that were opposed, there was some concern about the footprint, which was just cleared up in that question by Councillor Hillian. Traffic, which I think sounds like it won't be a huge issue. It's going to be a single family moving into the main house and the existing parents of those folks moving into this new residence. And other people were concerned about tree removal. And I did look and I couldn't see any indication of how many trees might be removed. I noticed there's a nice line of tall shrubs that are going to be planted along the property line. So I see some additions of greenery. Just wondering if there were any details at this point on any tree removals that might be taking place there.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Through CAO to Mayor and Council. So at this time, it doesn't look like any trees would be removed. We need to confirm that through a survey of the existing trees to ensure that they could all be maintained. But the plan is to retain the trees that are currently on site. And if you've been to the site, there is a little bit of a clearing already present where the proposed structure would be located. So it should be able to be sited without any further tree removal.
Okay, well, thanks very much. That's encouraging to hear. And I'll also be supporting this moving forward to a public hearing so we can hear from the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton. Next, we have Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, a couple of my questions have been answered, so thank you for that. I had a question, some comments came up around the second driveway and possibility of subdivision in future that was concerning, although I think I saw in the report that this wouldn't be a piece that would be subdividable is what I thought I read. And you know, the other query was around, or the concern was around precedent setting. This road in particular creates a bit of a buffer, as was mentioned, between the residential or the more dense Evans Place kind of area with the Lerwick Forest, and the desire of many to kind of keep that buffer there. And we certainly hear from a lot of people who are in those semi-rural neighborhoods, and often it's in those neighborhoods that have been brought into the city, some of them not as willingly as others. So I guess I'm wondering if there's any comment on, it might be too early, but in terms of the new OCP, I know we had a lot of conversations with people in this kind of type of neighborhood, and some resistance to having more density there. I'm wondering if you could comment on the driveway issue and subdivision, as well as future planning for this area. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the questions. Regarding lot size, current zoning restricts the minimum lot size to 2,500 square meters. The existing lot is already smaller than that. So under the current zoning, there is no subdivision potential. The owner would have to rezone the property again if the zone that allowed for a smaller lot size, in which case it would be back to council for consideration. So no subdivision potential currently. And as far as the driveways, currently has one lot. Each residential parcel is allowed one driveway. I know they conceptually showed a second driveway to access the secondary residence. This would require a variance to the subdivision and development servicing bylaw, in which case it would be again back in front of council for consideration. In that case, they've justified the variance as potentially necessary to preserve for tree preservation, in particular like one larger Budas tree, restrict access to this building from the existing driveway. So I guess in summary, that would be a future decision of council if the variance for the second driveway would be permitted, or else the owner would have to find an alternative parking stall for the car on site. With regard to future planning for this area, I think I'm going to maybe pass this one over to Mr. comment on the OCP process and any changes for this area.
And Matt, I might just interject quickly. Sorry, Mr. Buck. Matt, every now and again you'd kind of fade out. So just so you know, but I think most of your message got across. I just wanted to confirm with the councillor asking the question if you feel you're good. Yeah, excellent. And I'll pass it back to Mr. Buck.
Yeah, thanks very much through the CAO to Mayor and Council. So we're still a little bit early in the OCP, but generally the direction that we're looking at is focusing the more intense development in growth nodes. And I think through the process, you've seen some of those. The idea in the other areas is to allow what's sometimes referred to as gentle infill. And that would certainly include secondary residence, secondary suites, possible subdivision of larger lots, but the exact details of that are still being worked on. And then of course, the public consultation around that is yet to come.
Right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. And next we've got Councillor Theos.
Thank you, Mayor. I do like the idea of the families being able to be on the same property together with the children and the grandchildren and the grandparents. I really think that is something that should be more so seen as a viable option for in today's world. Rather than seeing grandparents or older people in the generation either struggling to try to find accommodation that's affordable and accessible, or trying to find long-term care homes that, as we've seen, have tremendous challenges in some of them throughout the country. But having said that, in regards to the responses from the people in the area, again, it was a mix. It was some in favor and some opposed. One of the and some had strong views in both senses. But one of the points that a handful of the people did bring up that were opposed was in regards to Airbnb potential. And again, this sounds like it's going to be a generational living where the grandparents will be living with the grandchildren and their children. But my question will be in regards to: do we have anything in place to prohibit Airbnb from occurring? Because I know we've talked about it, and we have raised some concerns about Airbnbs coming on board and us not really having a way of monitoring and regulating that. But secondary to that question, in regards to that we just talked about from Councillor Moran's question, in regards to that second driveway, one of the points that the proponent was making was that being that he and his wife are elderly, that their son and daughter-in-law are going to have 2 vehicles added to the property, but they themselves, the couple that are currently there, they don't do much driving. So having said that, I do have questions in regards to why a second driveway would even be needed, and that was brought up by at least one of the people opposed, and that is a good question.
Thanks for the questions. So regarding Airbnbs, that's currently not a permitted use in this zone. So an Airbnb as a use of the property wouldn't be permitted. I understand, I believe next month, a report will be coming to council outlining potential changes and regulations for Airbnbs. But as it stands right now, Airbnb would not be permitted on the property. Regarding the second driveway, as I outlined previously, it would require a variance and additional analysis and ultimately consideration by council. But to the point, there is options to park elsewhere on the property using the existing driveway, and it may result in a little bit of a walk to get to the secondary residence. But I would want to explore those alternatives before proceeding with the variance.
Thanks, Matt.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Theos. And I don't see any further questions at this point. And all my questions have been answered. So with that, I'll poll council for their votes, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
And Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Moore.
In favor.
And Councillor Theos.
Favor.
All right, and I'm in favor as well. Excellent, thanks for that. Next, we have the parcel tax review panel.
Yeah, I guess I could read this. Really lengthy. So I'll move that based on the March 1st, 2021 staff report. Parcel tax review panel 2021, council approve option 1 as follows. The date and time for the parcel tax review panel be established as 3 p.m. on Monday, April 19th, 21. And whereas to protect the health and safety of the public, council and staff during the COVID-19 pandemic and in consideration of the provincial class order for mass gatherings and BC Centre for Disease Control physical distancing guidelines, therefore be it resolved that council authorize staff to proceed with virtual participation in the parcel tax review panel as authorized under Ministerial Order M192/2020 with the following conditions. The statutory public notice requirements are satisfied in accordance with Section 94 and Section 208 of the Community Charter. That electronic participation be conducted by phone and virtual participation via webinar. That the virtual parcel tax review is broadcasted for public viewing via live web streaming on the City of Courtenay website. And that electronic participation for the parcel tax review proceed in the course of the COVID-19 pandemic and may be subject to changes as follows. As directed under the authority of provincial and federal governments through the Emergency Program Act and COVID-Related Measures Act or Emergencies Act Canada, until such time as the health orders restricting mass gatherings and physical distancing have been lifted, until such time as the provincial state of emergency for the COVID-19 pandemic has been rescinded and local governments may resume regular operations, or by resolution of council. And I bet no one shows up anyways, as usual.
Thanks. And we had a seconder, Ms. Hirsch, did you capture the seconder? Excellent, awesome. That, I know it was pretty quick. Thanks, Councillor McCullum. Trevor Kushner, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll pass this over to Renata Wicca, our Manager of Finance, who's with us tonight to summarize the report and take any questions that council may have.
Thank you through the CEO to Mayor and Council. First, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Robin Tate for preparing the staff report. And the purpose of this report is again to establish the April 19th, 2021 3 p.m. sitting of the annual parcel tax review panel. So every year when new rolls are added to the tax roll, we have to calculate the parcel tax as well, also known as frontage. We notify the owners of the amount and the dollar value that will be added to the roll, and property owners are given an opportunity to respond in writing. If they disagree with the amount or if they have any concerns that cannot be rectified at the administration level, then they have the opportunity to bring their complaint to the parcel tax review panel. And then therefore why we are establishing the date and time so we can let them know in our mail out. However, if we do not receive any complaints at least 48 hours before the time set for the parcel tax review panel, we do not need to hold the panel, which we have not had to do for the last few years. And with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Excellent, thanks very much. And maybe just to confirm then, if the parcel tax review is on April 19th, you said is it 48 hours or is it 2 business days?
Thank you, Mayor. It's community charter says at least 48 hours before the time set. It's actually not specific as to say business hours. So if we're hoping that any complaints that we would receive would be by 3 p.m. on Friday, and basically, we're able to handle them before that, and then we can cancel the parcel tax review panel.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Because I just figured if somebody sent something in on Saturday at 3 p.m., that might be less than useful.
Exactly.
Or might be complicated. With that, I will pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is certainly a case where it likely takes longer to read the resolution than to actually hold the meeting. But I did want to take the opportunity to acknowledge that this is a statutory measure that our staff have to comply with. And I wanted to thank Renata and all the staff involved for both the presentation today and all the work leading up to this. I know that all of our staff do us proud, and the finance department is no exception to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, for that. And with that, I don't see any other further questions or comments. So I will poll council for their vote, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor, Mayor.
And Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Moore. I may have missed that.
Sorry, in favor. I guess I unmuted or muted too quickly.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Theos.
Support.
And you're in support, and I'll vote in favor as well. Thanks, everybody. That's unanimous. And thanks, Councillor Frisch, for reading out that small novel for us. That was fantastic. Next, we have the security issuing resolution.
I can move that one, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'll move that based on the March 1st, 2021 staff report, security issuing resolution, long-term debenture loan authorization bylaw number 2978/2020. Council approve option 1 and approve borrowing from the Municipal Finance Authority of British Columbia as part of the 2021 fall borrowing season, $3,400,000 as authorized for the 5th Street Bridge Rehabilitation Loan Authorization bylaw number 2978/2020, and that the Comox Valley Regional District be requested to consent to the borrowing over a 20-year term and include the borrowing in a security issuing bylaw.
Second.
Excellent. And I'll pass it over to interim CAO, Trevor Kushner.
Thank you, Mayor. I will pass this over to Jennifer Nelson, our Director of Finance, to summarize the report and take any questions that Council may have.
Okay, thank you through the CAO to Mayor and Council. So this is the final step for Council in the process of borrowing for the 5th Street Bridge Rehabilitation Project. So we started this project in the process in April of 2020 with the first 3 readings of the bylaw. We've gone through all the statutory requirements, and this is the final piece. We need to get a resolution from Council to include this in the next regional district security issuing bylaw, which they will be accepting our request in the next month or so to include it in the fall 2021 MFA long-term borrowing. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And again, just want to thank staff for all the work on this and making sure that all of our fiscal ducks are in a row. And I don't see any questions or comments at this point. So again, thanks very much. And I will poll council, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
In favor?
And Councillor Frisch.
I'm in favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Moore.
In favor.
And Councillor Theos.
In favor.
Excellent. All right. Thanks very much for that. Next, we have a Fifth Street Bridge rehabilitation update. If somebody can move that.
Move receipt.
Second that.
Excellent. And I'll pass it over to Trevor Kushner.
Thank you, Mayor. I will pass this over to Chris Davidson, our Director of Engineering Services, to summarize the report and take any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Trevor. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council, staff are happy to present this staff report on the Fifth Street Bridge. So regarding color of the bridge, an online survey was released to the public from December 15th to January 13th, and the results show that the color classic green was the preferred color, winning approximately 52% of the vote. Regarding contractor procurement, an RFP was issued for construction. The contractor Park DeRoshi was evaluated as being the leading proponent. As such, notice of award was recently issued to them. We're currently working through contractor submittals with them. Regarding traffic management, we have confirmed that the majority of the traffic management strategy will be implemented as previously presented, including the identified detour routes, as well as the priority lanes for transit, school buses, and emergency services. Unfortunately, 2 modifications did have to be made to that strategy. Firstly, cyclists and pedestrians will not have a separated lane on the bridge deck during construction. Instead, they'll be directed to a scaffold walkway to facilitate travel. Cyclists will still be permitted to ride with traffic on the bridge deck if they choose. Secondly, the road under the bridge on the east side of the bridge will be closed to the public. This is to allow contractor access to the bridge. Traffic impacts in the park will be mitigated by allowing left in and left out access for the 2 parking lot entrances for the parks. So the contractor is currently working on a detailed traffic management plan to reflect this. Regarding communications, they will start to be released in the upcoming weeks, and key stakeholders will be re-engaged more directly. Touching on schedule, we're targeting a mid-April start date, and construction is still scheduled to last for approximately 6 months. Regarding project costs, they have come in a little higher than anticipated, which is the reason for some of the scope changes, but we do expect to be able to deliver the project within the existing budget. And with that, I am happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Chris, for your report, and really happy that that green was chosen. I did vote for green, and I had most of my family vote for green. And more importantly, I think, though, is the fact that over 50% of people voted for green. So it wasn't like even a close election or vote, as it were. So we shouldn't have anybody calling for any issues around that. So just for clarification, were you saying that for the entrances on both sides that basically you'll be able to enter, did you say a left-hand turn in?
Yes, that's correct. Left in and left out to get into both of them. Okay. Since we're not allowing traffic to move under the bridge, it's challenging to get into some of them without it. It's basically preventing people from traveling across the bridge if they don't have to.
And will there be people to help with that, or would just some signage and expecting that people who have their driver's licenses will understand the rules?
A little more complicated. We're probably going to have an automated light system or 2 out there, and we'll probably have some traffic personnel on site to assist in the initial weeks. But again, the details are still being refined, and we're going to remain a little bit flexible on that one. We acknowledge that's going to be a really tricky movement for traffic, so we're going to watch it very closely.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And I know we got a few questions or comments here, so I'll move on to Councillor Mccullum.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the update, Chris. My questions are mostly around these changes that have come up around the traffic management strategy. And I think these are pretty significant changes in terms of how we're going to encourage other modes of transit to get across the bridge. It jumped out at me that the amount of space that's being offered to cyclists that don't wish to cross the bridge on the road and pedestrians is only 1.5 meters. And I'm trying to puzzle how that's going to work with COVID restrictions and social distancing, I got out a tape measure and measured how wide my handlebars are with a person pushing a bike. It's at least 1 meter. So I'm just wanting to understand a little better how we're expecting people to share one direction. Even two pedestrians crossing, we're not going to be able to provide any kind of social distancing. So just curious what our strategy there is.
That's a great question, and we're still working through details at that level. So this is just the initial feedback from our contractor based on resources available. So now we have to sit down and do the hard work of actually trying to figure out how it's all going to work and flow properly. So that's still to be resolved, but definitely on our radar.
Is it okay if I ask another question, Mayor?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I also don't know if you can provide this information to council right now, but it is outlined in the report that it's a cost-saving measure. Are you able to share what kind of costs we're looking at saving? I could understand more if we're looking at really shortening the construction time, but it would help to have some perspective as to what kind of dollars that we're talking about to really be limiting people's ability to cross the bridge if they're not in a vehicle.
Oh, sure. I wouldn't want to release the exact dollar amount, but I will say it's a combination of both cost and schedule. So it basically changes, it prevents the contractor from switching the lane on the bridge deck 3 separate times and providing additional fencing and barricades to keep people safe, and then also changing the access to the bridge deck itself. So when sitting down with the contractor, they highlighted that it would be a considerable expense, as well as an impact to schedule. Unfortunately, I think I might sound like a bit of a broken record tonight. Cost is a concern on this project. So costs have come in a little higher than we anticipated. Unfortunately, we have to give up some of the nice to have items that we'd identified that we wanted to do as part of this work. So we're forced with a few challenges in that regard, I'll say that much.
Thanks for that explanation. And it is unfortunate that things have landed a little higher than we were expecting. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
And I think, when we start talking about sign-in and stuff, there may be an opportunity and really just because I did have that conversation with our medical health officer, Dr. Charmaine Enns today. Wearing of the masks is really one of the things that is on the list for when you aren't able to socially distance. So maybe that's one thing that we message out is if that is going to be such a tight space that we have people who at this point, I think pretty much everybody brings a mask with them everywhere, and just let them know that on that bridge portion there that that's something just for everybody's safety is an opportunity. And Councillor Mccullum, did you put your hand up for a subsequent or?
Yeah, I just don't want to dominate. I have a number of questions, but I'd like to see if other people get them answered. So I don't want to take over.
Fair enough. With that, thanks. I'll move on to Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Great, thank you very much, Mayor. And I also have a few different questions. So I may just ask 2 at this point if it's all right, and then I'll go back in the queue. One question, and so first of all, thanks so much for the report. This is helpful to get a sense of how things are evolving. I also have a few concerns about how the traffic management plan has changed. But I wanted to start off by asking just an overall question, which is more for that Park de Rocher is the contractor we settled with, and one of the things that was stated in the staff report is you felt that they were providing better value based upon their experience, and hence it was worth the premium that they were 140,000 higher than the other bidder. I was wondering, just so the public has an understanding of where that value lies in making this particular choice, can you expand a bit more about the qualities and experience they had that led them to be the successful bidder despite having a somewhat higher bid?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. Quality was provided a few different ways, actually. So it was found they offered superior value for the project. They had the most relevant experience. So a lot of the projects that they submitted as reference projects were more in line with the work we're undertaking in this project. So the reference projects were bridge rehabilitations, recoding, stripping down lead painted bridges. I don't want to go into too much detail on the other proposals, but or the other proposal, pardon me, but it's certainly lacking a bit in that regard. They demonstrated a better understanding of the project just in terms of the work plan that they laid out, gave us greater confidence that they'd be able to execute within the proposed budget and schedule. And lastly, they provided a proven subcontractor team. So they've done a very similar project very recently on the Point Ellis Bridge down in Victoria, just in 2019 there. And they've got all the same subs from that project that they're bringing up here. So they were able to demonstrate superior communications programs and interactions with this team. So we feel very confident that they'll provide great value for this project.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's really helpful in terms of clarity. And it sounds like this gives us the best chance of coming in with the time estimate that we'd had of making sure that inexperienced and learning on the project doesn't slow things down, because we're dealing with more experienced of the two contractors. And I just wanted to, I'll just ask one more question and then go back in the queue, but I had just a question about the park and ride. It was said that there's nothing in the budget to support any fees associated with a potential park and ride. But I was a little confused. It also says later on the project team is in negotiation with two sites in Courtenay to host park and ride locations. So I'm wondering if you can clarify, will there be a park and ride? And if there are no funds for it, how is it going to be funded?
Great question. So we don't have a lot of funds to support, say, like a monthly rental fee or anything like that. However, nominal contractual fee, yes, we can support that. So we're currently in discussions for 3 sites at this point in time. We're not talking about a significant impact to the project budget for these 3, so we feel that they are viable. The deals aren't signed yet, so I don't want to say where, put them on the spot. But we do have a small amount of money to support those sites.
Okay, so some form of park and ride is likely to be going ahead then, it sounds like.
Yeah, barring a few more hurdles, yes, we're hopeful that it will.
Okay, thank you. And I do have a couple more questions, but I'll see to others, put my name back in the queue. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton. So next on the list, we've got Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. No surprise, mine's around the traffic management as well, in particular the pedestrian route there. I guess I'm wondering about the accessibility issue for those on motorized scooters, etc. If this is only one side of the bridge, and I know that folks on scooters, etc., it's already quite narrow. I mean, that's the conversation about way back, possibly making that wider. So are we going to have sort of one-way? Are we going to have sort of one-way traffic where we have to wait for a scooter to go all the way across the bridge before the next person goes, or something like that? Because some of them are quite wide. In fact, they don't even fit in our accessible washrooms, etc. So I guess I'm wondering about that. And then of course there's large strollers. I'm concerned about the pedestrian access in particular. And we know that when the count was done, although there's been tons of debate about whether this count is accurate, I mean, 600 pedestrians, I believe it was, a day, or 500. Anyway, I don't have it right in front of me. I'm just wondering how they're all going to be. I mean, I know they're not all crossing at the same time, obviously, but I'm just wondering, how this is going to work, and this scaffolding. I'm trying to get an idea of visualizing what that means, and if that's going to pose any issues for, again, people on those in those other modes of moving around. Thanks.
Great question. Thank you for the question. Accessibility is paramount for the scaffolding and access. Yes, it will be limited. It'll be a bit of a challenge. It won't be as open as it is now. I would note that 1.5 meter width is standard sidewalk width in the city of Courtenay. Regarding one-way traffic for the scaffolding, we're going to try not to go there, but like I said earlier, that's still to be determined through traffic management and risk assessment and consideration of COVID. Regarding cyclists, e-bikes, they'll all be asked to dismount if they're going to be accessing the scaffolding walkway. Cyclists, if they choose to, can still ride with traffic on the bridge deck itself, so they'll stay mounted and take the lane as they do now. And as for what the scaffolding is going to look like, solid floor, completely enclosed, lots of handrails and barriers, clear 1.5 meter width between, so it'll be fairly safe and comfortable and protected, and more enclosed, and I think probably more welcoming than what's out there right now.
Great, thank you. So that part sounds pretty manageable. I think I just have concerns still about the other piece. For, you know, cyclists can dismount, and I think it's relatively easy, and also can go across the bridge, but it is a little bit more cumbersome when you have those motorized wheelchairs or strollers, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. And next we have Councillor McCullum.
Back to me already. Thank you. My question was, I was reviewing the original traffic management plan that we received, and one of the suggestions that was outlined was if the underpass did need to be closed, that flaggers would be used on the Lewis side. Is that what our new plan will look like?
Still to be determined. So we're still coming up with a detailed traffic management plan. The short answer is maybe. If it turns into an issue, then yes, we may need people out on site. If we can address it just with automated traffic lights that are synced up, then we're going to try and do that. But like I say, there's still quite a bit of analysis to be done. There's still a lot of work to be done in the detailed traffic management plan. We're expecting a bit of an iterative cycle too. So the contractor will propose something. We'll be reviewing with our traffic engineers, and it'll be back and forth. So there's not a simple answer there. I don't think. There's still quite a bit of work and analysis. And as I've stated a few times over the course of this project, we're really going to have to remain flexible out there with our traffic management. It is going to be a very challenging situation to manage.
Yeah, I'm just trying to envision, how pedestrians and cyclists and the rest are going to be crossing from the Lewis Park side over. I assume that we're sticking with the recommendation that the crossing is on the south side of the bridge, although it doesn't say other way in the report. But from what you've said, I don't know if there's been a reason to change it to the north side. So I'm just trying to visualize like how, I'm imagining tubers coming out of the river in the summertime and how that's going to look. Is there going to be a pedestrian crossing at the on the road side of the bridge, or is there going to be a small area underneath the bridge where people can still walk, or do we know?
We know some of that at this point. So the scaffold walkway is most likely going to be on the north side of the bridge, actually. So we're still reviewing that, but it's most likely to be on the north side. The left in, left out locations for the two parking lot accesses, we're planning to have automated lights there. We may have to include a pedestrian crossing there, activated pedestrian crossing, still being reviewed and confirmed. And then it's also a possibility that the public may have access underneath the bridge on the west side. So there may be an opportunity for pedestrians to cross underneath on the west side of the bridge. But like I say, this is all still being reviewed and basically needs to go under a big risk assessment still.
Yeah, well, the west side I assumed was staying open. I mean, there's no other change there, but there's got a set of stairs. So basically e-bikes are out and scooters are out. So it's not really a complete crossing. Also, I would point out that even a narrow bike, you can't have two bikes going in opposite directions in 1.5 meters. So it's going to be pretty hard for people to manage that walkway with COVID and bikes crossing on both sides. So I think we have some more work to be done there. I had a different question as well around the park and ride. I'm not fully understanding how we're going to encourage people to use it. Should we be providing it? I saw that there is still the provision for a transit lane. Are we imagining that will also include people that are carpooling? I wasn't clear on how we would imagine people taking the time to go and park and share a vehicle across the river if they're just getting in the same lineup that they would have been in anyway.
Oh, the main focus of the park and ride is actually to get people to use transit more. So the locations we've identified for the park and rides are close to transit stops. Also to encourage a modal shift. So ideally they can park at the location, hop on a bike, and then ride their bike from there if they're coming from further away. We're still reviewing through the lens of COVID whether we should be encouraging people to park and commute in the same vehicle. We may have some messaging stating, if it's within your social bubble, then, you may consider doing that. But frankly, we're leaning towards not even promoting that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't see what the difference is between wearing a mask on a transit bus or in another person's vehicle. But maybe our public health officials would disagree with my point of view on that. But I mean, certainly if we're going to take that kind of consideration and seriousness when it comes to people commuting, I think we need to do the same for those who are not in vehicles. So I am struggling with this change because I'm having a hard time imagining how we're going to make it work for 6 months. But I'll leave my questions at that and let others go. Thanks for your answers, Chris.
Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor McCullum. And I see next we've got Councillor Theo.
Mayor. Thank you for your answers, Chris. I'm going to ask a question in regards to the potential of other works that are going to need to be completed over the next time period. The 6-month window here, and we're going through a summertime now. Is there coordination with the Ministry of Transportation on works that may be done on some of their roads, maybe being put off, or coordinating on how to do that without creating even more of a bottleneck because work is being done on 19A or on Ryan Road, for instance, or even in our regard, if we're working on bike lanes, over the next 6 months, and create even a further congestion. Can you lay out a bit of a plan in that regard, please, Chris?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. I meet regularly with representatives from Ministry of Transportation, liaising on some of their local projects. So they're very well aware of this project, and the projects that we're liaising with are staggered around the Fifth Street Bridge. So we don't anticipate any conflicts with Ministry of Transportation. And then, of course, liaise closely internally with other staff and groups to make sure we don't have any conflicting projects. There may be some incidental work in the area, but we don't anticipate anything major that would cause any serious problems.
Much appreciated, Chris.
And Trevor, I see you put your hand up, so maybe I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And that was a very good question, Councillor Theos. We're also feeling the pressure from outside agencies to utilize our facilities for two things, really: vaccination centers. And if the federal government does, in fact, call an election, they've actually requested to use our facilities. So, of course, we're battling and pushing back, saying that we can't have that more traffic downtown. So there's a lot of sort of this perfect storm of scenarios of COVID, potential election, the pandemic vaccinations, and our facility usages. So Chris's group is doing an excellent job in trying to mitigate all those different factors coming in.
Much appreciated, Trevor. Great answer.
Excellent. And I know I've got Councillor Cole Hamilton next, but maybe I'll just comment on a conversation I think we had with the BIA, and it may have just been me, but about the idea of having some sort of call to action or a challenge on social media, et cetera, for people taking alternate routes. So when people ask about, when are we getting that third bridge, pointing out, well, we have a third bridge, and that gets you over Condensory, and doing something, maybe possibly even using a little bit of humor to try to get people to engage in alternative pathways to get to the same spot, if that makes sense. So, and I don't know if me talking has forced Will to turn off his camera, but if he's ready, I can pass it over to him. Councillor Cole Hampton.
Just a sneeze, Mayor, that's all. So I actually also wanted to ask a little bit about the communications plan. As I understood it from the report, the detailed traffic management plan is going to be prepared by the contractor and submitted to the city for review and approval, and then it will be shared with council and stakeholders. I'm just wondering if we have a timeline on when that would be occurring, because obviously we're beginning of March now and the project begins in April, and I think that a lot of employers and businesses will be really hoping to get a clear picture. How soon could they anticipate that clear picture of what the traffic management plan will be, when lane closures will happen, those kind of detailed things that people will find helpful in terms of planning?
Excellent question. Thank you very much. So our communications plan has been sort of ramping up in the background for the last few months. So we expect to start releasing details within the next couple of weeks. So media release will be going out this week. We'll be having updates going out on social media and in print media within the next 2 weeks. And those will include exactly those details you discussed. Pertinent details for the project, start date, duration, impacts, and then we're also looking at the possibility of including maps in some of the larger print media ads, detailing the detour routes and priority lanes, who's allowed in them, who's not, all of that information. So just to be clear, the detailed traffic management plan that the contractor is working on, that's going to spell out exactly where traffic control personnel and other infrastructure is going to be. We don't necessarily need that level of detail to help guide people through or around the project. We have our detour routes set. We have sort of how the lanes are going to function, whether it's priority lanes or general traffic lanes. So we've really got enough information right now to start promoting some of this stuff and to prepare the general public in advance of the project. And maybe if I can go back to a comment from the mayor, some of our communications will include encouraging people to take alternate routes and then in different modes as well, different transportation modes.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So it sounds like some parts we know now, and hopefully we can release the parts that we know for sure, like as soon as possible, so that people can know which parts are locked in place. And then you said it sounds like by mid-month, the parts that still need to be worked out, that are details that haven't been fixed, those should be coming by mid-month. Is that roughly the sort of timeline that we're looking at?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Okay, that is helpful. I wanted to ask a bit more about the underpass on the east side of the river. In the report, it said that would obviously need to be a flag or some sort of means for pedestrians and people with mobility devices to cross 5th Street to get to the side where passage is where they can cross. And it was said that the possibility of using the underpass wasn't viable because there would be a requirement for scaffolding for power cables, I believe it was. And that was prohibitive. I was just curious, do we have a sense of how much that was going to be, just so we know what we're weighing it off against? Because obviously having a flag or a signal which stops traffic on 5th is a fairly significant impediment.
Yes, great question. We do have that cost. I'd be hesitant to release detailed project costs at this time. It's essentially going to take like a pipe bridge built out of scaffolding to carry all of the ducting, sandblasting, hosing, power cables, all the other stuff over to the contractor's laydown area. So the laydown area we'd identified is a little ways away from the bridge in the parking lot. We'd hope that they've been able to include most of this equipment under or around the bridge and still allow access. We're finding out that's not the case. This extended pipe bridge would be required. So this would be a significant cost to rent, construct, maintain the scaffolding. It also presents some environmental and health and safety concerns. So the utilities that would be carried in this pipe bridge are the venting and ducting for the air control system. So this is foul air that's basically laden with lead blasting. So if that were tampered with or otherwise damaged, it could be a serious environmental or health and safety concern. The contractor was very, very hesitant to even entertain the idea, and said it would be a cost not just for the scaffolding, but also just inefficiencies in them accessing the work site, maintaining tools, keeping things running. It would be almost a non-starter for them.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. That gives some greater clarity. It's a cost and also obviously a safety component wrapped in there as well, which helps to make that a bit clearer. And I guess just as a final comment, I would just echo some of the concerns I've heard about the 1.5 meter pathway being some space available for pedestrians, cyclists, and people with disabilities moving in both directions. It doesn't seem like an adequate capacity. So any steps that can be taken along the way to improve upon that would certainly, I would encourage whatever can be done to try and improve on that situation, as it's obviously it's far from optimal. Anyway, thanks for the report, Chris. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Excellent. And I know on the communication side, a lot's been there's been a lot of communication with the BIA, the Downtown Courtenay Business Association, but I know the Chamber of Commerce is also keenly aware and also very keen to be a partner in that communications to get it out to their membership as well. So it's something that I kind of assume and think is probably already in the plans, but I thought I'd just mention that just because I did talk with Dan Hawkins just in the last couple of weeks. So I told her I'd pass that on just to make sure that she's in the mix. So and with that, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I also have some questions about just traffic flow with the new traffic management plan. You mentioned that people using bikes to travel could travel in the car lane. Would you expect then, like the bikes could queue up at the front, and then would they all go at the same time, or would it just be like the bikes going in one direction would go, and then the bikes going in the other direction would go?
That's a great question. We had anticipated that cyclists would sort of come up the priority lane, filter to the front, and then lead off when the light changed or when it was their turn to go. However, if they wanted to remain back in the queue with traffic, they're free to do that as well. If I was a cyclist, I'd probably be at the front.
Yeah, that's where everyone likes to be anyways. And so no traffic persons, you suspect it would be just a set of lights?
That's our plan for now, but like we say, we've still got some risk management to do, some analysis to do there, and if we see any issues, we're going to have to jump in. Absolutely.
Okay, and so other modes of transportation, people traveling in scooters or wheelchairs, like if they don't have enough room to cross, as mentioned, well, like 1.5 meters, you wouldn't get two scooters crossing the bridge at the same time. So if they wanted to go over to the car lane, would they do the same thing, make their way to the front and then go across there?
We would not be encouraging scooters to go into the car lane at this point in time. No, we would ask that they use the pedestrian walkway.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds super inconvenient because if you have two scooters going in the opposite directions, they're usually a meter wide each, so we would need like 2 or 3 meters to accommodate that. The same with someone pushing a stroller. I mean, you get two parents pushing a stroller, and you can't cross the bridge. So yeah, I guess I would just really encourage staff to sharpen their pencils on this one and try and figure out something that really does prioritize alternate transportation, because this kind of just sticks them at the bottom of the list and goes, you know what, if you're not in a car, we don't really care about you crossing the Fifth Street Bridge. And that's not how I feel about it, and I guess staff don't feel that way either, so I think we need to do better. So Thanks for the report. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. And that seems to be the theme of the evening. So we'll definitely be looking into that further.
And sorry, just one more. Would we be seeing then the next iteration of the plan to see if we can change this a bit?
Yes, we will be. We are planning to bring the detailed traffic management plan back to council.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And I see that, interim CAO Trevor Kushner had his hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Maybe I would just end the conversation with, I think from the from the beginning of this project, staff have always said that we'll be as flexible as possible. The reality is that this is probably, and I think I'm confident saying that this is the most complex and largest project that's been undertaken in the city of Courtenay probably for 20 years, maybe even longer. Frankly speaking, respectfully, I think there's a reason why this project has not been undertaken is because of these very things, is that it is very complex. I would like to give council the assurance that Chris's group, along with myself, will do everything we can within the means of the budget to stakeholder engage and do what's necessary to help people and to mitigate. But at the end of the day, this is a very complex, very profound, but our project in the heart of our community, in the downtown, on a bridge, and it's extremely difficult. So there's never a perfect scenario, and it's just one of these things where we're going to try to pivot and adapt as we can, but there's going to be consequences, and we'll just try to mitigate those as best as possible.
Thanks, Trevor. I really appreciate that. And as somebody that used to push a double wide stroller around with twins, I can tell you there's lots of places you can't get into that most people can. So, there's going to be certainly some scenarios that are going to be, I guess, I don't want to say collateral damage, but they may be impacted obviously by these works, which are temporary. I mean, this is just for 6 months or so, and then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled program with a green bridge now that we know the color. Councillor Cole Hamilton, you had another comment?
Yeah, just a really quick question. I just wanted to clarify to make sure I understood that the 1.5 meter scaffolding walkway, is this a scaffolding over the existing 1.5 meter cantilever that exists there, or is it a different location? Because my recollection, if I'm correct, is that the existing cantilever is not always 1.5 just because of the pillars. So this will be 1.5 clear, I'm understanding, which means it's probably somewhere else. Can you explain where it would be just physically so I can picture it?
Yeah, directly adjacent and to the north of the existing cantilever on the north side of the bridge. So it'll be an extension out, a cantilever from the cantilever, if you will, of 1.5 meters. And yes, it will be a clear 1.5 meter width between.
Okay, thank you. And just as a follow-up that gives them a clearer picture, is it possible for this cantilever on a cantilever to be greater than 1.5 meters? Is that something that's anyway, which can be explored?
Yes, and that's definitely going to be explored.
Okay, all right, thanks. We've probably made our point. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate answering all the questions.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton. And yeah, I think Chris's comments are, he's heard loud and clear where council's at on this. So, as Trevor's commented as well, they're going to do what they can with what they have, so to speak. Councillor Frisch, you're back.
Yeah, if you're happy to dispense with the receipt, I'm happy to move that the council will approve option 1 based on the results of the 5th Street Bridge color selection survey, and that we go with the green.
All right.
Second that vital detail.
All right. Well, I'll kind of interject and just say I will assume that receipt is unanimous, and then consider Councillor Frisch's motion. And Councillor Cole Hamilton, you seconded it?
Yes.
All right. Any questions or comments regarding said motion? Seeing none, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
I'm in favor, Mayor.
Councillor Frisch.
I'm in favor, thanks.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Moore.
In favor.
And Councillor Theos.
I'm in favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Fantastic. All right. Now I'm getting a bit discombobulated. Was that the only motion for the 5th Street Bridge then? That was it?
Whew.
a long conversation and a very short motion, so I appreciate that, Councillor Frisch. With that, we will move on to the, I believe the next one was the Comox Valley Sewer Commission. That sounds
Move receipt. Second.
excellent. And I normally I would pass this over to interim CAO Trevor Kushner, but I know he said that Councillor Hillian, who's also chair of the Sewer Commission, can probably field this one. So I will pass over to Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I have taken on that role in the last several weeks, and it coincides with the passage of the conveyance route for the sewage system as part of the liquid waste management plan. So we have this letter. I was rather startled when I read through it and then saw it was actually signed by me. I'd forgotten about that, but there you go. Basically, a major decision that has been made by the Sewage Commission choosing the preferred conveyance route. You'll see from the letter that it involves 2 sections of tunneling along with other cut and cover. Huge impact to the streets of Comox over a significant period of time. But of course, the very positive result that we get the existing pipe out of the foreshore along the Willamette Bluffs and the estuary along the Comox First Nation. So this has been relayed to the public, and this letter formally notifies Council as a key part of that Sewage Commission and relying on this service. And I'd just like to thank Trevor Kushner for all the support and information he provided to myself and Councillors Cole, Hamilton, and Moore prior to the meeting of the Sewage Commission where this issue was considered. There were a lot of factors to take into account, and there were concerns that we don't have a detailed design plan for the street routing at this point, and whether or not the project should go ahead on that basis. But the regional district staff worked incredibly hard to bring this process to this point, and provided the reassurance that this is the preferred option at this time. So I'm happy to take any questions if required.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hillian. And I know, when I first got onto the regional district, this was, I think, my second sewer committee meeting after being elected vice chair, and the chair, Councillor Theos, having to work that night. I was put in charge of the open house for what was then called pump station number 2. That was just over 6 years ago. And although it's been not necessarily the fastest process, I think finding these new routes is the best decision. I know it's not the cheapest one, but it certainly sets us up for success well into the future. So thanks for everybody's efforts on this file. Really appreciate it. And with that, Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to point out that a ton of work has gone into this project, and Councillor Cole Hamilton has actually pretty much been there from the start, putting in long hours at meetings with about, I think it's 19 other members. I don't know if that's the exact number. A lot of those members of the public putting in their own personal time, and I don't know if he wants to speak to or not, but it's a lot of work has gone into it, and I really appreciate that. So thanks very much.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can just add, clearly, I take no credit for this project. I know that it's been a huge amount of work from the community advisory and the technical advisory perspective, along with the individuals who served on the Sewer Commission to bring this to fruition. And not the least of those would be Councillor Frisch, who has chaired that commission for the 2 years leading up to this project. So he certainly deserves significant credit for the work involved up to this point. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hillian, for that. And I don't see any further questions or comments. probably just the last one, although you're saying you don't deserve any credit, Councillor Hillian, if anything goes wrong, I'm sure somebody will come looking for you. But I think one of the things, again, staff have worked, I think, really hard over the last 6 years to hopefully get us technically to the right place at this point. And I certainly have a lot of trust in their capacity there. And so, again, a big thanks to staff and everyone else who's been involved in this. With that being said, I mean, it is just for receipt. Did anybody, and we've had some questions, I'll assume unanimous receipt from council unless anybody waves their hands in vigorous opposition. And moving along to reports and updates, since we already had the report from the fire chief, and starting, I believe, with Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. Apart from the news with regards to sewage conveyance, the significant news out of the regional district, it has been released to the public today that the regional district has given 6 months notice to the Comox Valley Economic Development Service of the discontinuation of the contract with that organization. And I think it's worthwhile to comment that we hope this will be a mutually cooperative process of wrapping up the current contract. And I'm sure we all certainly want to acknowledge the service of CVEDS, its volunteer board of directors, and its staff over a significant number of years in the growth and development of the Comox Valley. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hillian. And I'll just echo that, yeah, I think that the CVEDS board has received a lot of heat, and for a volunteer board, you know, they've behaved, I think, fairly professionally over the years. And again, like you said, hopefully it'll be a great sort of collaborative process in that transition of responsibilities. And next, I didn't have any other councillors unless anybody had something they wanted to add, possibly Councillor Moore, and I didn't know if you wanted to speak to anything or not.
I can speak to something, and you can jump in and add to it. So I had the pleasure, I guess a couple days ago, or was it just yesterday? My goodness, maybe it was just yesterday, of taking on the winter challenge. Chief Nicole Rempel had issued a challenge out to some of the community leaders after she had done the cold water plunge, with some ceremony that goes along with that challenge for Indigenous folks. And it's kind of a cleanse to, especially in these days of the negativity and the stress that everyone's been under with COVID. It's a time to just be able to wash that away. And she did her plunge with some cedar brushing and also, I think, 4 different dips and facing the 4 directions. And there's quite a ceremony. She makes it look effortless because she does this on a regular basis. So she put out the challenge. Mayor Wells took up the challenge, and then he challenged some more folks. And so I did that on the weekend, and actually challenged some regional district folks, and Chair Kettler actually took the plunge in Comox Lake. So it was a kind of a fun thing to do, but there is a great kind of meaning behind it, and that is that it's sort of symbolic to take a look at how we can kind of wash away the troubles or the negativity and become numb to it, maybe from the cold water. So thank you, Mayor, for challenging me. And I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, well, you know, I can speak to my experience. I was certainly honored to be asked to partake in the water challenge by Higus Rempel, Chief Rempel from Comox First Nation. And then, you know, I'll mention Christy Bell, who reached out, and we chat frequently anyways, but but we talked for quite a while to get a better understanding of the ceremony and the spirit behind this, and so yeah, it was really nice to do this. Like you said, it was sort of like a reset, sort of a refreshing, and really trying to recenter. And so thanks so much. I do appreciate you taking up the challenge, and Chair Kettler for doing that. MP Gordjohns has reached out to me to let me know that although he isn't able to do it right now, that he will at his first availability make this happen. So I look forward to that. And again, I think it's one of those types of experiences that hopefully we get more participation as the years go on. And again, this might circle around the valley for a little bit. I'm sure once it warms up, people will be more excited to do it. But of course, it's a winter challenge, so that's a bit of a time-limited event. A couple other things maybe I'll just speak to quickly. And I think we mentioned this already, but we did have the coldest night of the year a couple weeks ago now. And again, a big kudos to our community who came out. I think most, if not all, of our council was out walking. Lots of people from a cross-section having that socially distanced, safe experience, but we still raised far more than the $121,000 that we had as our goal. I believe we were well over $160,000, possibly even $170,000. So just amazing from our community. Another event just this last weekend was the Yana fundraiser that happens, their Big Love dinner, which of course, again, due to COVID was canceled in its traditional form, but they adapted. And again, they raised, I believe, over $100,000 at a virtual event. And so just, again, huge kudos, not just to the organization for persevering and adapting, but for our community to coming to the table and to really support these organizations that really add to the fabric of our community. And I just can't say enough about them. And two other things. Every year I do, if time permits, and actually last fall was the first time I wasn't able to, but I was able to do the interviews at Vanier again, working with the career kids. And again, great experience, a fun time talking to the kids and getting them prepared for the next step in their lives. And so I was really happy to be able to be part of that. And really kind of a tangent to that is the Meet the Mayor appointments that I have with people, open to really anybody that wants to meet with me. And those are things that, I've started before the pandemic, and, we adapted those to phone calls, Zoom calls during the pandemic. And I know I have to say thanks to Rayanne, who tries to organize those, and she's done a fantastic job. And it really helps, again, connect the community to I think our local government. And it's an important thing. So I want to thank those that have asked to meet with me, and I really appreciate it and cherish those times. Lastly, I just want to kind of go back to how I started the meeting with some of the comments from Dr. Enns, only because I think it's really important, and it's the messaging I think we need to get out again. Again, from the school district, using the words, of the recent spike in the exposures and infections of COVID-19, that it's a wake-up call for us to really get back to the basics. It's not rocket science, and I know I talked earlier about really avoiding those social interactions, dinners and parties, those kinds of things. But again, washing hands, staying 6 feet away, wearing your mask when you can't socially distance. Again, really just getting that message back across our community as leaders, I think is critical. And really, I want to touch on one thing that Dr. Enns really wanted to make sure we were clear on, and that's the fact that right now, even though there's more infections happening, that the age of the people being infected and the fact that older people are getting vaccinated does provide some comfort in that infections are going to happen. That's what happens in a pandemic. So we don't want to get angry. We don't want to lose our patience with our fellow citizens of the Comox Valley. We really want to make sure that we're working with them. We are given that call to action to make sure that they're being as safe as possible. But again, I just want to call out the fact that some people have been leaving notes on vehicles because they say the license plate is from Alberta, and that's just not acceptable behavior. Telling people to leave our community because they think they're from somewhere else. That's just not who we are. And in most of those cases, if not all of them, they are people from our community. And so that's just completely unacceptable. And lastly, there's also been a lot of posters being put up around town that say that that the pandemic is over and that people can go back to normal and all that kind of stuff. And again, just fake news, basically, people that are trying to spread some misinformation. And it's unfortunate that we have people doing that when we have, I think, great leadership in Dr. Bonnie Henry and right through the medical community to show us that, with some compassion and really being patient and just trying to make sure that we're safe for ourselves and for those around us, that's really what's going to get us through this. It's been a year so far, and we still got a long road to go. So time to double down, get back to basics and move forward. And I appreciate your patience listening to my little rant there. Hopefully it wasn't too ranty, but again, I think we really want to just get people back on track with staying safe. With that, we do have resolutions of council, and I will pass it over to Councilor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to bring this resolution forward, which is entitled Speed Limits and Safety Signage on Multi-Use Paths. Whereas the city's multi-use paths have become increasingly busy with pedestrian, bicycle, and e-bike traffic, and whereas significant safety concerns have been expressed by path users, particularly around cycling speeds and pathway sharing, therefore be it resolved that staff prepare a report that outlines options for implementation of increased safety measures such as speed limits and signage, that researches these measures and their impacts on other communities, and that pilots these measures on the Air Park Riverway Trail and the steep section of McDonald Road, Lerwick Road area.
Second.
Thanks, Councilor McCullum, for seconding that. And Councilor Moore, do you want to speak to your motion?
Sure, thanks. So I think some of us, or maybe all of us, have received some communication from folks, particularly around the Air Park multi-use path, and also some of the steep pathways that are shared with some specific safety concerns. I think there's safety concerns across many of the paths, but those are the ones that stand out. And so I started to do a little bit of research around it, and found that there were several communities that have some safety measures on their multi-use paths, particularly signage, and also many of them actually have speed limits, and it seems like the most common speed limit is 20 kilometers an hour. And I think with the insurgence of e-bikes, it's particularly important to take a look at this. And when I bring this up, I'm not putting this all on cyclists, because other concerns have come up with pedestrians kind of weaving all over the road. I mean, you have small kids and they're darting here and there. So my intent with this motion is really just to have some better awareness, particularly in the form of signage, but also maybe considering speed limits on some of those really well-used paths. And it was suggested to maybe pilot some of these measures in a particular area. The area up around Hawk Drive and McDonald was also pinpointed as it's quite a steep hill, and there's a lot of concern about pedestrians sharing that with cyclists, and the cyclists going down the hill quite quickly. And maybe a dog or a child will run out and there's really no way to stop. So maybe having some signage that that basically just alerts people, maybe having people dismount their bikes, that kind of thing. I know that some of the communities I found, Cranbrook has a bylaw that they've implemented quite a few years ago, actually. Victoria, I believe Kelowna has one. There's quite a few communities I found, and I'm sure our staff could find many more, and also kind of take a look at what the impacts have been. And some of the guidelines have had language that relates to bike riders, but also pedestrians, people on skateboards, etc. So it's not kind of placing the blame on any particular group, but really just trying to find ways to share those pathways in a safer manner. And there's lots of really good signage that can go up. So that's basically the gist of it. And I'm hopeful that we can find some middle ground. I know that some people have said, well, cyclists have bike lanes on the regular roads, so they shouldn't even be on our multi-use paths. And I made the point that's the point of multi-use is that we all share. And you know, many people on bikes are on those paths for recreation and not commuting. So we need to find a way to share in a safer way, I think. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. And yeah, and I think, you know, when we think of those conflict points and just really just the conflict of different modes, I think that makes good sense. So thanks so much for bringing this forward. And Councillor Moore, Mccullum.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Moore for bringing this motion forward. I think what we're looking at here is an issue that arises when multi-use paths are successful in their purpose, and when we have many users in the area. And I've been for many walks around the air park in recent months. And I have never seen it so busy as I have since the beginning of the pandemic, and I'm sure that some of the communication that we've received is coming out of that popularity of these pathways. And I think what's at the heart of this is really helping people understand how to be respectful path sharers. And it's not so much about getting out there and making rules, and as having the public understand that you can't share a pathway with young children on run bikes or scooters and whiz past them at 30 kilometers an hour. So if it helps to set out that that's 20 kilometers an hour, or just educate the public that you need to slow down when you're sharing a multi-use trail, whatever method is, is most effective is what we would like to do. I just want to also put in a plug for the Mighty Bike Bell. People that have experience in multi-use paths do ring bells when they come up behind people, and most people really appreciate it. I know when I use it, I often get a thank you when I pass people, and it goes a long way for providing safety. It reminds people that there are bikes whizzing up behind them. And in conjunction with this motion, I think it would be a great initiative for us to maybe consider getting out and giving out. I think you can buy a bike bell for about $2, and maybe combining that with some bike to work week activities, or one of those events where we do outreach with multimodal commuters, because I think a lot of people are unaware just how much people appreciate getting the warning before a bike goes by, even if it is going by at a slower pace. So I just wanted to that to Councillor Moran's comments. Thanks.
Fantastic. I think those are great ideas, Councillor Mccullum, and I know possibly even having those notes on signs and stuff, if there's going to be signs up anyways, would be probably a great idea. And interim CAO Trevor Kushner, you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would just like to echo the comments that were said tonight. We're certainly seeing an increase in the complaints with the interaction and interface with the different mode shares. That said, I think that we're in good stead, simply because between myself and Mr. Shaw, our Director of Public Works, we have over 50 years of public works experience, which means that we've done this in other jurisdictions, and we have a lot of connections and network throughout the public works community. So we'll certainly be leveraging those, and look forward to a pilot project. The reason why the pilot project was so important is because, to give some perspective and context, we have over 240 kilometers of multi-use pathways, so you can imagine the budgetary impact. And I think Councillor Mccullum, you made an excellent point that it's really not about the hard infrastructure or maybe even the enforcement. It's really about the educational component. So we'll certainly include that, and yeah, we look forward to bringing that report back.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And Councillor Mccullum, I think your ideas are some calls to action with Bike to Work Week, et cetera. I think you'd probably have all of council's support, and probably cycling coalitions and iRide. There's, yeah, the list goes on and on. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Moore, for bringing this forward. Yeah, I'll echo a little bit of what Councillor Mccullum said, in that, you know, when you do use your bell, I mean, I've ridden that multi-use path for 20 years, and I've actually never had a problem or conflict with anyone, and but it's really about giving respect to all the other users. And I just want to point out, this is a bit of actually a good problem to have. It means that a lot of people are getting out and being active and using our wonderful infrastructure, and it kind of just heightens the need to build more of it and to invest in more of it. And I think that's why people are happy living here in the Valley, because we have these great amenities. And so I hope we can work on moving forward on making more of them, and happy to support your motion, Councillor Moore. Thanks.
Excellent. I think we've had a pretty robust conversation. It's been moved and seconded, so I'll poll council for their vote, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Moore.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
Favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Fantastic. Thanks very much. And next we have the in-camera motion.
I'm happy to move this, Mayor. I'll move that a special in-camera meeting closed to the public will be held March 1st, 2021 at the conclusion of the regular council meeting pursuant to the following subsections of the community charter. 90 subsection 1 subsection I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
Second.
Excellent. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll poll council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Moore.
In favor.
And Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. And moving into bylaws.
I can move this one, Mayor. I'll move that zoning amendment bylaw number 3026, 2021, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 2500, 2007, S 8.1.28, sub 6, adding, notwithstanding any provision of this bylaw, a secondary residence is a permitted use to 2011 Cummings Road, first and second reading.
Second.
Excellent. Any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Moore.
In favor.
Councillor Theos.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. And for third reading.
I can move this one. I'll move that zoning amendment by number 3010, 2020, number 301 and 303, 444 Lerwick Road, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 2500, 2007, section 8, 32.4, adding, notwithstanding any provision of this bylaw, a storefront cannabis retailer as a permitted use at number 301 and 302, 444 Lerwick Road, past third reading.
Thank you.
All right, and that's been first and seconded. Any questions or comments regarding this? Oh, Mr. Richmond. Wendy.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out that there was a typo in the reading, and it should be unit 302, 301 and 302, not 303.
Okay. Oh, that's in the title of it, and then the part in the brackets is the correct one. Does that make sense?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for clarifying that. Based on that new information, I don't see any questions or comments. but I will pull, I do see a hand up actually, Councillor Theos.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to just confirm with staff with the clarification in regards to when we were talking about establishing these facilities. We had a few provisions. One of the restrictions at the time was that we had a maximum number of units in this nature, and the other one was a distance from schools. Can I get some clarification of what our maximum was amount of these storefronts was at the time, and whether we're at that capacity now, not including this facility, and the distance that we believe that this is away from our nearest elementary school, which is Valley View Elementary, that this is beyond that 500 meters.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So not including this application, 6 other cannabis retail outlets have been approved across the city. So this would mark the 7th to be granted zoning for the use. I know 2 of them haven't opened up yet, with the others all in operation. In regard to distance from school, so the council's policy requires that a cannabis retailer is at least 300 meters from a public or independent elementary school. And so in this case, the nearest school is beyond that 300 meters.
Well, thank you, Matt. But I was just wanting some clarification of what did we set as our maximum? Did we set 6 or did we set 7 at the time as our maximum for the cannabis use retailers?
Thanks. So the maximum would be 6, and this is inclusive of the government store. And then so again, this would mark the 7th, so we would be exceeding the policy.
Well, thank you, Matt. Well, that basically will lead my decision in this regard. Is that I really was impressed with the potential proponent coming forward in this regard with what they're doing in Comox, as in terms of being able to retain their staffing and supplying a store there. But when we set out our maximum, which was not very long ago, we did it with the belief that we were going to actually see results, and we were going to actually be able to get some measures of the impacts of what the cannabis stores have had in their areas of where they've opened up, and moving forward, we could have made decisions beyond that. I feel that we haven't had any discussion of what the impacts have been, whether there has been any or not. But since we've set up a maximum, I feel that conversation absolutely needs to be in place before we expand on our numbers. So.
Thanks, Councillor Theos, for your comments. And one of the opportunities that we have is several times throughout the year, we have our police chief, Inspector Kervers, come and speak to us, where we can ask them questions like this if they're seeing increased calls. But when we look at research from most municipalities across the country, is that crime actually goes down, and we can look to Victoria, one of our closest one that's got really good data. Crime actually went down because of the increase in lighting, the increase in security, and that includes security cameras that are usually put inside and out. So, based on your comments, I will add that to my next conversation with Inspector Kervers, just to confirm with him. But when I speak to him, this is not something that he's ever brought up to me as a concern. So, but I do appreciate your comments on that. And Councilor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that as well, around the limit, which was imposed with the first, or the council prior to this one. We don't have all the shops open that have been approved. But I think we did bring this up and asked, I thought we had asked Inspector Curvers, or maybe it was just our bylaw folks that we had asked the question. There haven't been any complaints about anything at the ones that are open. I think this proposal also is only the second one on that side of town, and it sounded like there was clientele in that area. I also wanted to note, I don't have the hard facts in front of me, but just in some news reports, etc., the actual age of the customers frequenting these cannabis shops, particularly in certain areas, reflect the demographic of that neighborhood. So I think some of the comments about undesirable people hanging around or bad things happening, we haven't seen the evidence of that. And in fact, I think we're providing an opportunity for people to be able to get their product in that area, where instead of going to the other side of town and driving to Comox. So I haven't seen any of those concerns pan out. And I think that if we had an issue with a bunch of problems, then we could stick closer to that guideline. But it is just a guideline, is my understanding, and we have the prerogative to do something different. So I'm in favor of this going forward, and I really don't see any issues around it. So thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moore, for your comments. And I think really, one of the reasons why a lot of people were in favor of this is to create that safe supply, access to safe supply that otherwise wouldn't be there. And again, really keeping the sale of cannabis, at least the profits from it, outside of the criminal element. And so I think, again, these are things that we've been able to observe previously in other municipalities that, like, say, Victoria, Vancouver. But since legalization, I think that's really what I'm hearing from other mayors from at least across Vancouver Island in the Sunshine Coast that I speak to fairly frequently. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to Councillor Theos's point, it was my understanding from staff that the policy guideline could be exceeded if council so chose, and we did have that discussion when this application originally came forward. We did receive a number of written comments from people in the neighborhood who objected based primarily on their feeling that it wasn't in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, and that they would really prefer to have a pub or restaurant there. I think it's a signal to entrepreneurs out in the community that that section of town would like to have a pub or restaurant. But this is a legal product, and there have been no issues arise with the shops that have established elsewhere. I think that we had a credible presentation from an established business owner who wanted to expand and provide this service in that part of the city. We had a public hearing and no one presented. No one saw it as a big enough issue to actually take the time to call into that public hearing and object. And on that basis, I'm happy to support this going forward today. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, for your comments. Councillor Mccullum.
Thanks, Mayor. I was just going to take my hand down because my comments are very much along the lines of what Councillor Hillian and Councillor Moore already said. I think we have good reason to support this application. We want to see these outlets dispersed around our city, and Crown Isle represents the largest shopping area on the west side. And it currently does not have the service provided, and I don't really think that based on what we've seen in other locations that we have any good reason to say no to this. So I'm happy to support it. Thanks.
Thanks for your comments, Councillor Mccullum. And I think one of the things, maybe at a future meeting at some point, we'll talk a little bit more about town centers. But the fact that this is kind of the town center for the eastern side of our community, I think is certainly again follows within the comments you guys are speaking about. Councillor Theos.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, no, my concern is that this is fairly new of the legalization, and the 3-4 years ago when this was moving forward and the discussion was moving forward, as was discussed just in the last few minutes, is that there was talk about there was going to be a reduction of drug dealers that were out there that were pushing the product, and this was going to provide clean product, which would mean that it would become safer out there. But what I'm seeing is that a few things. One is that there's a couple of schools that are right near that area, and I see a steady stream of youth that are going into that mall on a regular basis, and already there's a liquor store, and to me, I don't know how many we're going to have as in terms of cannabis stores in the community. I don't know how many liquor stores we're going to have or how many we need. I'm not seeing a reduction of lives being lost to drug use. I'm not seeing a reduction of people out there that are illegally selling product and have many buyers. It doesn't matter how many of these stores are out there at the moment. I'm not seeing a reduction of that. I am seeing more and more people that are young, that are affected by drugs in a negative way. And I'm not seeing the successes that some of you might be encouraged by with these kind of stores. So I think that I would like to see how the 6 pans out, and give it some time before I continue to follow this direction, this lead of saying, unlimited amount.
Thanks, Councillor Theos. Appreciate your comments, and I think especially if you look at the last year, and it's a comment that we've had with our MLAs, with our ministers, and even with Dr. Charmainians today, which is the increase in death, whether we talk about opioids, the increase in alcoholism that's happened during the pandemic. If we look at alcoholism as one of the bigger issues, the fact that no liquor stores have been closed during the pandemic in reaction to that, I think speaks to I think our province's focus on giving people the right to choose to a certain degree. I think with that, I'll pass it over to Councilor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. At the risk of getting into too much of a debate, I just, in terms of, we know that alcohol causes far more harms than cannabis, and we don't even flinch often. I think this council has been a lot more, thoughtful about even liquor establishments than maybe in the past, because we recognize that alcohol does carry more harms. And in terms of deaths, I just want to shatter that myth that people are dying from opioids. They're not dying from cannabis, and absolutely young people can start with substances like cannabis, alcohol, tobacco, etc., and it develops into something else. But really, our drug deaths are from opiates and often stemming from prescription medication to start with. So I just don't want to muddy the waters here when we come to what's actually happening in our community, and it's not by a friend of my family who is a very conservative guy who's about 80 now and has a lot of pain and is using cannabis, or someone else who has anxiety and uses cannabis, or the person who's just using it just like someone has a glass of wine every weekend. So, I get a little frustrated when I hear these arguments that just don't add up. And I think we do have to be careful, and we have to be thoughtful, and we have turned down locations because they've been right next to a skateboard park, as an example. But as someone who worked with youth for 20 plus years, I do not see youth walking down to the cannabis store at lunchtime. They're more apt to get their supply from somewhere else, or a store that is more hidden than that. So I just wanted to point out that some of those comments from the public or otherwise are just not accurate. That does not mean that we shouldn't be thinking seriously about substance use in the community, even with cannabis. But let's be real about what is actually causing the deaths, and it's a toxic drug supply, primarily with opiates. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moore, for your articulate comments there. I really do appreciate that, and I think what maybe we'll move forward on our vote here, but what might make sense is I may bring back that policy for council to discuss sometime in the future, so that we can look to see does it make sense to adjust that policy in some way, and just open up that discussion. And probably part of that discussion will include Inspector Kervers, possibly getting some comments from our medical health officer, et cetera. But given the fact that we are in a pandemic, I don't want to put any extra pressure on either of those two people. So, it will be probably a ways in the future, but just given the tone of this conversation, that might make good sense. And possibly that will put a measure of comfort for Councillor Theos to really open up that discussion. With that, I'm going to poll council on third reading here, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
I'm in favor.
And Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Oh, sorry. I have hands going up. Mr. Richstead.
Mayor, we didn't document a seconder for this motion. We only have Councillor McCullum moving it.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Councillor Frisch, for that. I'm sure I heard somebody, or maybe I just felt like I heard somebody, but thanks for stepping in. I am now lost on, I think I did Councillor McCullum last. Was that correct?
You did.
Oh, whew. All right. Back on track here. Councillor Moore.
In favor.
And Councillor Theos.
I'll be opposed.
And I'll be in favor. All right, thanks for that. And now we have for final adoption.
I'll move this one, Mayor. Adoption.
Second.
Excellent. We may have too many people doing it now, but thanks for that. Any questions or comments? I know we just had a relatively fulsome discussion on this topic, but I'm ready to move forward with polling council, starting with Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Frisch.
In favor.
Councillor Hillian.
In favor.
Councillor McCullum.
In favor.
Councillor Moore.
In favor.
And Councillor Theos.
Opposed.
All right, and I'll be in favor. And there's only one thing left.
Adjournment.
Second.
Second.
Any